About tipping, U.S. tipping culture. So I worked in the food and service industry for a couple of years. I waited tables. I know a lot about the tipping culture in the U.S., but I want you to hear the way that elites are discussing this. Now, Case Study QB, shout out to him because he clipped this as well. Cringe conversation as the panel discuss and debate U.S. tipping culture. You got to hear this to believe it, guys.
Not to sound like a total hater, but genuinely what the hell's going on with this whole iPad tipping thing? Like, it's gotten so far to pain, it's almost laughable. Okay, the other day I ordered food. I ordered it online, went to the website, put in what I wanted, sent out the order, then got into my car to go pick it up. I get there, I give the girl my card to pay for the food. She puts it in, whatever. And then all of a sudden she spins that iPad around. I get whiplash. And she's like, would you like to leave a tip? Girlfriend, for what? What did you do? No, I'm actually going to flip this thing right back at you. I will be taking a tip, 20%, thanks. And then once you're done, go grab me a shirt. I'm clocking in. Because at this point, I'm genuinely more of an employee of this establishment than you are. And I would like to be compensated.
Okay, it's funny, but it's an issue, right? This is another thing that COVID changed, right? Because of COVID, we're now cashless. There's no tip jar. COVID reminded us how our service workers are important. They're underpaid. It's why we were giving such big tips after COVID. But is it the consumer's responsibility to make up for those service workers not getting paid? And especially now when people who never got a tip before are saying, here you go, here's my QR code.
Yeah, for what's the job? There are certain jobs that we're ready to tip for, and there are certain ones. I mean, my coffee order is easy. It's black coffee, thank you, tip. What, that took you 5 seconds. No, what's even worse, by the way, is when they ask you if you want to donate to a charity for sick children, and you have to say in front of like everybody in line, like, I just wanted to buy a hammer. I feel weird. I guess so, because I'm being shamed into doing it. So there's all kinds of ways, and it's tough to know if people how much money they're making. We should have cash for tips. There should be a jar. You can leave the change. That's enough said.
It's tricky.
I disagree, actually. I think I might be the only person around the table who is kind of fine with this new paradigm on tipping. I'm okay with it, because as long as they're...
But what is the new paradigm on tipping?
I mean, the new paradigm is... Tip more. Yeah, tip more for services. If you are being served, then tip someone. That is...
Well, now I feel like a monster, Hayes.
I'm just saying, as long as people are out there struggling to make a living wage, especially with all, with inflation and everything, everyone is struggling. But I feel like if you're in a
consumer, potentially.
But if you're in a service industry job, I feel like it is worse for you. You are trying to make ends meet, often on a part-time gig, often trying to do it with no control over your hours. And I think that if we're going to really fix this, then we should make it so that the minimum wage across the country can no longer be dependent on tipping. For one thing,
I went to Starbucks the other day and I hit the no tip and I felt so awful. I ran out, and then the next time I went back, I was like, I need to just start handing out 20s before I even order my latte. Here, 20 for you, a 20 for you. Thank you all so much.
I mean, either tip them or let them unionize. One of the two. That's where I'm at.
Get recognized. How do you think? You're Stephanie Rule. If you don't tip, people are going to get taken.
I definitely tip, but I noticed this because my son applied for a job this summer as a checkout guy at a pizza place, and the person who interviewed him said, dirty little secret, you're going to make twice as much as you think because people are shamed into tipping.
Is that right?
And this was the owner of the pizzeria that said it. But
that's actually interesting that the owner said it, not another employee trying to give him low down dirt. It's like that's the employer saying, I won't pay you as much as I should because you're going to make it in tips. And that, I think, is the unfair thing. And that, I think, is what needs to be changed. If we want to have a conversation about reducing the amount of tips we give out, we need to talk about the employer side of things and them actually paying people fair wages.
Fair wages, real about tipping. Walk around with a bunch of fives and give those fives out to people who don't normally get tipped. It's amazing.
Bingo.
I love you. You feel good about it. Everyone's happy. That five means nothing. What are they going to do? Go downtown with a taxi. But you have a moment. You're my doorman. Thank you very much.
Wow. Notice how the woman at the end of the conversation there, notice how she said, that $5 means nothing to me. Because to her, it doesn't. None of those people on this segment worked in the food industry. None of them worked in the service industry. You could tell by the way that they were talking. That $5 doesn't mean anything to me. Let's talk about this for a second. I actually did work in the food industry for a couple of years. I was a waitress. I waited tables when I was in college, when I was an undergrad. I waited tables after undergrad. Like I had 2 jobs at one point. And what some people may not realize, and I realized this as a waitress, some people don't realize that waiters or servers don't make minimum wage. When I waited tables, I was paid $2.13 an hour. By the way, I never got a paycheck because by the time the system has calculated all the tips, like the credit card tips that you get, what I would get is a pay stub that said void. So I never actually got that $2.13 an hour, which means that people who are servers and some of the bartenders too, bartending can be a little bit different with the hourly wage depending on where you are. We really rely on the tips. We really do. That's what they're going in for. So every time you go out to eat and you have a server, just note that they're relying on getting those tips because that $2.13, it might be a little bit higher in like New York City, but I was making $2.13 an hour. So you want to get the tips, right? But what is the bigger issue? The bigger issue is the fact that servers in this country aren't paid a living wage. And that is why they have to rely on the tips. If you're paid $2.13 an hour, you're not even making that $7, was it $7.25, $7.50 minimum wage, federal minimum wage? You're not making that. And the reason why they're not paying you that is because they come up with this excuse, because you get tips. That's why you're not getting the $7.25 an hour. I think that's bullshit because you're not guaranteed to get tips. And see, this is the piece that people don't understand. There were times when I went into work on a Friday, Saturday night, and I did really well in reference to tips. But then there were some nights where I went in and it was a slow night. Monday nights were the worst. So I didn't make much in reference to tips, like on Monday night or on a Tuesday night. So you're not guaranteed to get it. That's the thing. So servers oftentimes will pick up extra shifts. That's not uncommon. I had a second job. See, that's why I had a job where I got a paycheck and I had the waitressing job. But some of the people that I worked with, they were college students. A lot of us were in college, but there were also people, there were servers that worked with me when I worked at Outback Steakhouse that were in their 50s. And that was their full-time job, waiting tables. So they really needed that money to take care of like their family, to pay their bills. Not everyone waiting tables is a college student. And I think people may not get that, right? At the same time, there have been moments where I did see servers got some pretty nasty messages on their receipt. I remember one time there was a server, somebody wrote on her receipt, 0 tip because you should have went to college. She was in college. And even if she wasn't in college, why would you write that? That's such an elitist thing. Like, why would you say that to someone? Right? So every now and then you would get customers that were just nasty. Customers that would write 0 tips. Some people really did not know that we were only making $2.13 an hour. But some of them did know, and they just didn't want a tip, period. But they would run you back and forth. Give me this ketchup. Give me the mustard. Give me this. Give me that. And I've had tables that have done that to me. They ran me back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Very happy I don't wait tables anymore. So you'll have that. And sometimes you'll have people that will come in that will surprise you. I actually had a table one time. I'll never forget this. The guy came back to the kitchen. He was standing at the kitchen door. Of course, he couldn't come in there. And one of the other servers said, "Sabrina, your table's at the door." And I was like, fuck. Oh, if you could hear the language back in the kitchen, if anybody here is listening, has worked at a restaurant where there's been cooks in the kitchen or whatever, if you could hear the language, you would look at restaurants very differently. And I think you would be a lot nicer to your servers. I'm just letting you know. So I go to the door and he's standing there, and this motherfucker ran me back and forth. I ain't gonna lie. He pulls out $100 bill and he said, I just want to let you know you did exceptional service. So this is for you. And I looked down at it and I was like, for me? And he said, yeah, for you. I was like, are you serious? He said, absolutely. I still remember that till this day. That guy gave me $100 tip. So you'll get some people that are like that are generous and really do want to help, right? But the big problem here, though, is that regardless, they should be paid a living wage. In some countries, it's not customary to tip because the servers are paid a living wage. Same thing for bartending too. But one thing I do want to educate people about, when you give people tips, depending on what restaurant they work at, sometimes that money, a portion of it, we have to actually tip out other people in the restaurant. So we have to tip out the busboys, we have to tip out the host, and sometimes we have to tip out the bartender too, because they make the drinks for our tables. So you may have made $200 in tips on a Saturday night, but after you've done your tip out, you might leave with $150. So just for people who are not aware, that don't know, I do want to explain to you like how it works. I always try to tip at least 20%. That's me, but I also don't go out to eat that much either. But that's my rule of my rule of thumb. I try to do 20%, but yeah, that's what the discussion really should be about. Why aren't they paid a living wage? Then you won't have to worry about tipping. Just being honest. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Terry. Zadeb said, quiet things out loud. Tip them or let them unionize. Yeah, I know that conversation. I watched that video from Case twice this morning and I was like, yikes. Bill Bradley says federal minimum wage for a tip job is $2.13 an hour. Yeah, I think it's higher in New York City, if I remember correctly. JB, a bunch of PMCs debate tipping to the poors. I was just like, what? Where are the people who wait tables? Why aren't they on this platform, this segment? Thank you for the super chat, Delthea. Tipping is a jack. It's the owner of a business jacking the customer for wages for the owner's employee. It's a jack to the customer, to the server, because tips are not required and often are not left. Yeah, like I said, you can have a good night, you can have a bad night. Kamshwari Kate, I tipped $100 at the car wash in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the owner management intercepted the money right in front of me. I'm sorry that happened. That's messed up. That is really messed up.